Chapter 13, Generation of Abraham. Begin all acts and thinking by using Al-Kalum the All. Tablet 8, the Kaaba, the navel of the earth. 19 times 14 equals 266. Lo! El planted the tree of knowledge of agreeable and disagreeable in Gan, the centre of the enclosed garden of Sauda, the outer field, in Nasut, and above it is the tree of life for eternal life. Becca is the navel of the planet Earth, and Gadash is its heart. El made it so that regardless as to where Cadman was, the tree of agreeable and disagreeable could be seen. The Kaaba of the enclosed garden in Eden, in Becca, is exactly the centre, where the tree of knowledge of agreeable and disagreeable, with its roots downwards, was. Above it, in Malakut, is the garden in Eden where the tree of life in its midst, rooted upwards to Lahut. Cadman was commanded to build the Kaaba, a house of El, over the tree in the midst of the garden in Eden of Nasut. He laid the foundation of the Kaaba under the direction of the Anunnaki Gabriel, who told Cadman how to cover his body with the traditional dress for pilgrims, and how Nekeba was to cover her body from an apron to a full robe. Gabriel also taught Cadman the customs and ceremonies of the pilgrimage, which is to tie an Ifrit band around the tree by running around it 7 times and kill the point where Nekeba was tricked, but do not eat of it as a sign that you have overcome Nakash, the whisperer who whispered into the chest of Nekeba. 7 times at the right corner, and say, begin all things in the name of El Elo. And at that point, where Rudwan, son of Araziel and Rafikiel stood, kiss it only once in 7 times and say, Our Rab Sustainer, give us the best of this physical world, and at the end of it, good, save us. This is what Cadman was ordered to do. After completing this, the Anunnaki appeared to him saying, O Cadman, your pilgrimage has been accepted by the forgiving sovereign. At a place called Mina, Cadman asked Eli and Elionel, could he re-enter Malakut from Nasut? But Eli and Elionel told him, in 49,000 cycles, Muzdalifat is where Hilal came to earth, and the spot where Hilal met the peacock outside of the enclosed garden, Aqaba, is where you must throw 7 stones. For the 7,000 years your seed will be in Nasut. O Cadman, 49 stones for 49,000 years Hilal will live. 7 times 7 equals 49. Each day of creation is 7,000 years, or 1 day is 7,000 years. 7 days is 49,000 years. He, Hilal, will rule Nasut for 6,000 years. For 1,000 years he will be chained in the pit of Argata. The 3 pillars are for the 3 forms Hilal took in the garden, the serpent, the old man, and Garubat. So you stone him also at these points, as a sign that you know him, and you have overcome the temptation, saying, I begin in the name of El Elo, I do this stoning, because I hate the devil. Thus was the practice born of stoning false prophets and evil people. It was during this time of Cadman and Nekeba's separation, from being cast out of the enclosed garden in Eden, Delight, which is Becca, that Cadman was instructed in building this Kaaba. During the time of Utnapishtim, when the flood covered the face of the earth, the Kaaba collapsed and was also consumed. Thus, the place on which it had been remained until the time of Abram, when El willed that the house should be again erected. The honor of performing this construction was to belong to the family of Abram. Gabriel was commanded to accompany Abraham from Syria to Becca in order to build with his son Ishmael the edifice of the Kaaba, and to invite the inhabitants of the world to make their pilgrimage to the house of El. When Abraham had completed his journey and arrived in the sacred place, he perceived Ishmael sitting at the foot of a mountain, engaged in cutting arrows, whereon the exalted father informed his virtuous son of the instruction, and he cheerfully complied. When the news-bearer Abram and his son Ishmael began to rebuild the Kaaba with the assistance of the Anunnaki, they found the box which contained the black stone. Sakina, the Anunnaki of hot wind, blew the sand away to reveal the foundation as to where the Kaaba was to be built. Set within a box, 4x4 cubed, shaped in ebony blackwood, inside of which was the black stone. The Anunnaki, who during the time of the flood had taken it to the place called Shambhala, Abu Kabas, now brought it back, and Abram fixed the stone in its proper place. When Ishmael returned from searching for a stone, he saw the black stone and asked his father who had bought it. His father replied, He who has neither left you or me without stones. Around the black stone glowed a bright light, which was the Anunnaki that preceded it. The Anunnaki are beings created of the pure green light of intellect and the impure amber light, the fire before the foundation of this world. Sarufat, Garubat, Marid, Jinniyah, Ifrit, Ghul, Selat, Sela. These are the species of them. This is the light which the faces of the righteous will be brightened from, the day they make pilgrimage and kiss the black stone, until the last day in remembrance of Cadman and the Kaaba. When the edifice was completed, Abraham and Ishmael thanked and praised El. When they finished their prayers, they said, "O El, we confess to you to be the most wise and the bearer of prayers." Gabriel ascended and informed them of the acceptance of their prayers. He taught them the ceremonies of pilgrimage, as well as the necessary things that are to be done at Mount Arafat, the running and circling of the area, the throwing of stones and the sacrifice. After Abraham and Ishmael had circled the house of El and performed the ceremonies, Abraham appointed his son Ishmael to the government over the noble region and gave him instruction on how to maintain it. He no more called it Becca, but called it Mecca. When he was about to return to his native country, he ascended to the top of Mount Arafat and looked towards Syria. He looked in the direction of the country surrounding Mecca. His blessed mind was occupied with thoughts of Ishmael and his descendants, whose future existence was revealed to him by his prophetic light. He considered how arid, stony, sandy that district was. The mountains that appeared to his enlightened gaze were barren, without water or grass. The environment was unlike Syria, which flourished with delicious fruits, plenty of trees, excellent water, good climate, and a population of numerous tribes of the sons of men, Adamites and Enoshites. When Abraham weighed all these circumstances, he was greatly moved. When raising his hands in prayer to the mansion of the Omnipotent, he besought that Ishmael and his seed may enjoy much success. When he had completed his supplications, he went to the sanctuary and was again reminded by a heavenly voice to invite the inhabitants of the world to visit the house, the Kaaba, so that the honor of building it and also inviting all people to it should belong to him. Hereon, Abraham also asked, "How far will my voice reach?" And the allocation came, "Do you invite, and I shall bring the invitation to pass." Abraham then returned to his place, which became large like a mountain. He first turned his face towards Sudan and exclaimed in a loud voice, "Elion Elionel has by his bounty and grace ordered me to build a house for you, and invite you to go on a pilgrimage thereto, and circumambient it. Obey the command of Elion Elionel quickly, that your pilgrimage may be accepted, that your endeavors may be approved, and your transgressions forgiven." Then he turned to the east, and to all points of the horizons repeating the same invitation, which was answered from every direction in the world, "We await your behest." And it was repeated on all sides. And when he looked into the direction of India, a voice came from that very same direction and declared, "This most holy place is mine, and in time it will belong to me, that I may implement the worship of the stone and not Allah, and the building and not Allah, and the rituals and not Allah." And he knew this voice to be the voice of Shaitan, who would come from the direction of Yamama and introduce the false Muhammad and the false Sunnah that would deceive the whole world, with the many sects that will call themselves the righteous and will call themselves the true Muslim. These are the ones that will unite themselves with the 30 Dajjals, Antichrist, when the Quran of the real Muhammad will warn them not to make friends with these same people. They will disregard that law and wine and dine in the belly of the beast, with its 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains, and on them the confident wife is sitting, and they are 7 rulers. And this great beast with its 10 horns shall be 10 wicked rulers. And alignment with them will cause these false Muslims to spread terror and mischief and bloodshed in the world, from the seats of Egypt to Lebanon, to Iraq to Sudan, to Turkey to Syria, to Jordan to Morocco to Palestine. And right from this holy spot they will spread their mischief in the cloak of Al-Islam on your family for all the times of their coming. And take heed that they deceive you not, for many shall be deceived by them, while all the time claiming, "Surely we are the perfectionists," after they have been asked not to make mischief in the world, but in fact they will surely be the mischief makers. And when they come in contact with a real Muslim, the Ansaru Allah, they will say, "We also have faith." And when they are left alone with their satanic friends, they will say to them, "Surely we are with you," and that we are only ridiculing them. But in time, the source El-Ila will ridicule them by way of themselves, and will increase their rebelliousness, and blindly will they wander astray. This was the first declaration to pilgrimage, and he cried 7 days and 7 shadow hours for this great vision. So all Muslims were ordered to say, "Here I come, O El Elo, here I come, O El Elo, no partner to you, here I come. Surely the gratitude and the graces to you, and the kingdom, no partner to you." When Abram, the friend of the Merciful One, had ceased to call the inhabitants of the world to visit the holy country, he made Ishmael his successor in the noble city of Mecca and returned to Syria. The next year, when the season of pilgrimage had approached, Abram came to the city of Mecca, where they performed the circumambulance and the ceremonies connected with them. On that occasion, Ishmael acted as host and servant and obliged Sarah so warmly she was very pleased. Yitzhak came every year to Mecca at the time of the pilgrimage, renewing his covenant of amity with his brother Ishmael, and then performed what has come to be known as the pilgrimage and the ceremonies. When 127 of Sarah's life had elapsed, the bird of a victorious spirit soared to the rose garden of El, and the land of Canaan in Mamre, Hebron, had become the place of her burial. After Sarah's death, Abram married Keturah, daughter of Nimrod and Samaris, by whom he begat 6 numerous progeny scattered over the whole world. Yes, a father of many nations was Abram. The sons of Keturah were Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak and Shua. And of Midian the 4th son came Luqman the newsbearer with the scroll of wisdom. On the termination of the 150th year of his noble life, the traces of age began to manifest, and Abram's moustache became grey. This happened to no man before him, because for Utnapishtim it was his full beard that became grey, that is, in one day his whole beard turned silver grey. On this account, Abram became very melancholy and said, "O Sustainer, increase my dignity." Abram made taful to the giver of life and death El, not to cut the thread of his existence with the scissors of fate until he himself made the request. His petition was heard, and when the time of his death had approached and his departure had become necessary, Israel entered his noble assembly in the disguise of a decrepit old man. Abram placed food before him in the usual way, but while he was eating, the hand of the Anunnaki trembled, and he sometimes threw the morsel which he had taken up into his ear, sometimes he moved it to his nose, and sometimes to his mouth. Abram then asked, "Old man, what are you doing?" The Anunnaki replied, "All this is an account of old age." And to Abram's inquiry concerning it, he replied, "I think I am 2 years older than you." Whereupon Abram continued, "Verily the difference between your age and mine may be no weakness. Will I be like unto you?" To this remark, the Anunnaki at death ascended, and Abram, who became very depressed, cried, "My Creator, receive back the deposit of life wherewith you have entrusted me, for it is of no use to me in connection with feebleness." And the Anunnaki at death, having been ordered to take hold of his soul, conveyed it to the eternal world. When El Shaddai completed all the spiritual and physical blessings with which he had bestowed upon Abraham the exuberance of favors and virtues granted him, and commanded him to take the pure spirit with his own consent, or else to return to his place. According to his instruction, the Anunnaki at death appeared before Abram and explained his task. Hereon, Abram asked for a little respite and engaged in the performance of a few religious and secular duties, attendance to which is considered indispensable by all intelligent persons. And lastly, he appointed Yitzhak to be their successor in the country they lived, Syria. When the time of respite had expired, the destroyer of pleasure girded up his loins of service and executed his office of life-taker. When the Anunnaki of death had been ordered to snatch away the soul of Abram, visited him for that purpose, Abram said, "O Israel, also known as Enki, son of Anu and Id, did you ever see one friend command that the life of his friend be taken?" Hereupon, Israel hastened on to the celestial region of Malakut and reported the word of Abram, from which he received the following reply, "Have you ever seen a friend who loves to meet and to see a friend?" Israel conveyed the message of his sustainer to Abram, who now requested him to immediately carry out the orders he had received. The Anunnaki of death accordingly took hold of his pure soul, and his ebony body was laid to rest in the field of Hebron by the side of Sarah, and Hebron is the land of Canaan. Yitzhak and Ishmael were separated until the time of their father's death. When they reunited, they greeted one another accordingly. Ishmael retained the purity of his father's speech, a shurik, which is called Arabic, greeted his brother, Assalamu alaikum. His brother Yitzhak replied in the language acquired through the mixing of seed and therefore the tongue with the Phoenicians, and said in Aramaic, which is called Hebrew, he replied, Shalom Aleika. Syriac Arabic was the pure language of Abram. However, he spoke Chaldean, being born from Chaldea. Not only for the fact that he was a nomadic Arab, but in order for the communications to have existed between father and son, there had to be an existing language. That was the language. Sunnah of Abram. One day, Abram went out for the purpose of finding a guest, because his laudable custom was not to eat without the company of anyone. After much searching, he found an old man and brought him to the house. He later discovered that he was of a polytheistic religion and sent him away without giving him anything to eat. When the old man had gone, a reproving voice was addressed to him from the heavens. O Abram, this rebellious servant was, despite his disobedience and sinfulness, never excluded during his life from the banquet of benefits. But this day, when one meal was expected of you, you have driven him away from the house, hungry and disappointed. Abram was so touched by this admonition that he immediately went in pursuit of the old man. He found him and brought him back to the house, offering many apologies. The guest then asked the host why he had first sent him away, then recalled him. When Abraham informed the old man about the whole matter, he exclaimed, all gratitude is due to Eli and Eliel. Who blames his friend for the sake of his enemies? Then the idolater dismissed his superstitions and became unfaithful to the sustainer. After that, Eli and Eliel bestowed Yitzhak upon him in his old age. Comments made regarding how very strange it was for Abram and Sarah to care for and treat a stranger as their son. To remedy this situation and remove all suspicion, Eli and Eliel, the Almighty Creator, made Yitzhak resemble Abram perfectly. Then after Yitzhak's moustache had grown, he could not be distinguished from his father. Hence, the wisdom of the Almighty considered it appropriate to change the hairs of Abraham's noble moustache to a white hue. This change allowed the two to be differentiated. Another of the customs which Abram introduced is the wearing of trousers. Since the revelation was addressed to Abram by El, you are the one of my people whom I most love. It is not fit that the ground should see your hidden parts while you are praying. Accordingly, Abram made himself trousers. It is also generally known that the laws and hospitality have been invented by him, and he always ate his dinner and supper in the company of guests. He was the first to choose flight for the sake of the religion of the sustainer and benefactor, and he was the first individual who will be invested with the ornaments in paradise. He is the Imam, leader of all men. When Eli and Eliel tried him, he fulfilled all that was put before him. Abram established a custom of dividing booty, the cutting of the hair so that it will not enter your mouth, and the non-removal of your beard and moustache, picking the teeth, gargling the throat, pulling out the hair under the armpits, shaving the hair from the pubic area, cutting nails, purification by water, inviting guests and feeding the poor. Abram was the first to establish laws concerning inherited property and obtaining it. He also made strenuous efforts to build towns and to colonize districts, many of which flourished during the lifetime of Abram and his descendants. The duration of his life was 175 years. He passed into the higher life suddenly. It was a day full of thunder, lightning and rain. When Abram rose for his daylight hour prayer, he felt the presence of the divine, and his wind seemed shortened. He wheezed and called, O Eli and Eliel, my moment has come to join you. He went into the first prostration and ascended from there. It is recorded that he departed from this painful and contemptible abode to the blessed mansion of paradise of a Friday, the 9th day of the first month. So Abram expired in an old age as an elder, satisfied, and was gathered to his nation of people. And Yitzhak and Ishmael his sons embalmed him in the cave of Machpelah in the outer field of Ephron, the son of Zoar the Hittite, which was right before Mamre the outer field, which Abram purchased from the children of Heth. There was Abram embalmed with Sarah his confident wife, and it came to pass after the death of Abram that the Elohim blessed Yitzhak his son, who dwelt in Beer Lahai, and blessed Ishmael his son, who dwelt in Arabia, and blessed the 6 sons of Keturah who dwelt in Jordan. There was much weeping and sadness in that day for the families of Abram at his departure. These are the practices, Sunnah of Abram, for his seed in his time, called Millet Ibrahim, who was Al-Hanif the upright. Tablet 9, the sons of Abraham. 19 times 4 equals 76. Lo, when I, Abraham, the friend of Eli and Elianel, heard about the death of my beloved wife Hagar the Egyptian, I sought the house of my eldest son Ishmael. Hagar, the daughter of Imhotep and Russia, was a gift to me from her father, who was a high priest after the order of Melchizedek El. He knows the path to the underground cities. Hagar was the first woman in my house to wear the nose ring. She, being born of divine birth, a psychic, was given to me that she would assist me in my task of cleaning the lepers in the Caucasus Mountains. Upon my arrival, I saw Rala, the mate of my son Ishmael. She informed me that Ishmael was not at home, but out on a hunting trip. Since the occurrence of Hagar's death, Ishmael had become very depressed, and hunting was a form of enjoyment to him in this difficult time. Because Rala, Ishmael's mate, was unfamiliar with my person, she showed me no hospitality, so much so that I assumed her to having no ornaments of courtesy. I, the friend and newsbearer of Eli and Elianel, requested that Rala relate a message to Ishmael upon his return. The message was, a man paid him a visit, and that the threshold of this house was not proper, and he ought to change it. After relating this message, I departed and left for Syria. When Ishmael returned later that evening, his heedless spouse informed him of what had taken place. He replied, "That man is my father, and the threshold of this house is you. The changing whereof implies divorce from you." Accordingly, he divorced Rala and married a maiden adorned with good manners from his mother's tribe of Tamaray in the valley of Serabid el-Kadam. Her name was Sayyida Fatima, and she bore Ishmael 12 sons. They are Nebajoth, Kedar, Abdil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetta, Naphish, Kedemah, and one daughter named Bessemah, also called Mahalith. When I returned to Ishmael's house, Sayyida Fatima greeted me warmly and gave me food to eat and made sure that I was comfortable as possible. Sayyida Fatima washed my face and begged to wash my feet and hair, for I, being of a great many years, was an eldered man by this time, and for me to walk long distances must have shown on my face. The next time I visited the house of my son Ishmael, I told Ishmael's wife, Sayyida Fatima, to convey this message. The threshold of this house was very comfortable, and he needed not change it. When Ishmael received this message, he replied, "This is good news for you, my beloved companion and spouse, for the old man is my father, the friend of the merciful one, who has commanded me to keep and cherish you. I hear and obey Eli and Elianel and his friend, therefore I shall accordingly to all my power endeavour to please you, and to conform myself to all your wishes. I, Ishmael, shall be your sons and daughters' father." So he went in unto her, and she begot a son named Nabajoth. Nabajoth was killed by the Anakims on a hillside. His sons and daughters became slaves unto them, and the Anakims and their seed became mixed with the cursed seed. And thereafter, Kedar the Great became Ishmael's caliphate successor, whose mate was Asia, from whom the seal of the newsbearers would come. So he, Ishmael, begot Nebajoth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadar the Wise One, Tema, Jetta, Naphish, Kedemah, and one daughter named Bessemah, who was the only daughter of Ishmael. Bessemah became the wife of Esau, or Esau, who was called in tones Esau, and in rhythm Aias, who was the twin of Jacob. He descended from Yitzhak and Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nachor and Milcah, and the sister of Laban. Laban was the father of Leah and Rachel. They were two of the 4 wives of Jacob. His other 2 wives were Bilhah and Zilpah, who were servants given to Leah and Rachel by their father Laban. This is where the law of 4 wives comes from. This man, Jacob, Bessemah, changed the name to Mahalath on her husband's request, because he had taken another wife with the same name of Bessemah. She was the daughter of Elon the Hittite, who descended from the cursed seed of Canaan. She was before called Ada, and yet he had another wife called Judith, daughter of Beri, who also descended from the cursed seed, and Aholibamah, daughter of Anah, of the cursed seed. The result of Esau's marriage to Ada, Judith and Aholibamah, came the Edomite nation, another accused cursed nation. Esau was very protected of Mahalath, because Kedar, her brother, would have taken his life. Esau was not as protective of his other wives. He was cruel and abusive to them, because his marriage to them was out of spite. Esau lost his birthright through the deception of his mother Rivkah. On several occasions, Kedar would come into the camp and kidnap his sister, telling her that she married into a wicked seed, which was a sin. Each of the sons of Ishmael was to become great and rule many in their nation, but none was as great as Kedar, known in tones as Kedar, and in rhythm Kedar, who was mated to Asia, daughter of Salim the devoted. He was of the family of the sons of Mitzrayim. They begot a son first and named him Nabat in the land called Faran in Becca, and all this land was named after this wife of Kedar, Asia. My son Kedar was dark as my shadow hour and strong as my wind. He was the first to ride on the back of a horse, and he pitched a host of black tents. He had the anger of a great lion and the smile of a baby. He ate once a day and never played as a child. He had no friends the same as me. He was the first man to which muscles could be attributed, and at the age of 20 he had a full beard and lost his left eye. Ishmael loved him more than he loved me. Abraham spoke of his strength and power and faith, which was only second to Adapha's. He, Kedar, protected his sister at all times. These are the descendants of my best Adapha. Now our servant Adapha had a very close friend who was always with him and who admired him very much. This companion of Adapha was the first to be addressed by the title Sheikh. He never separated from Adapha, and he prepared all kind of things for him. The bond between Sheikh and Adapha was so great that when Adapha had to pass on to a higher life, Sheikh was so passionately affected by this separation that he never ceased to cry. By being so greatly depressed by the loss of his companion, his countenance dropped, which invoked the very presence of Halal. Halal inquired about the cause of his misfortune, and Sheikh informed him. All of Sheikh's grief was because he longed for Adapha and the lost blessings that accompanied his sacred friend Adapha. After hearing this, Halal, also called Iblis the rebellious one, who was of a diabolical mind and thought, said, "If it would please you, I will make for you a teraphim in the similitude of the person who you yearn, and by associating this teraphim with the noble individual, you will become peaceful again." He, Halal, told him that he, Sheikh, could take the teraphim and pull it in his dwelling. No one else could see it, and that he would not be accused of idol worshipping. The friend of Adapha and Halal constructed a teraphim which was the idol of Baal. This tall statue looked like a slender man at first sight, and the structure strongly resembled Adapha. Thus the pain and anguish of having lost his blessed companion Adapha was greatly diminished. Sheikh erected this teraphim in his dwelling so that no one can see it. Every day in dusk period he visited it in order to blot out the pain of losing his friend Adapha. Nevertheless, Sheikh suddenly died of a broken heart because he missed his companion Adapha, whom the idol could not replace, for Adapha was from the truthful. The people who had not seen Sheikh for several days entered his dwelling place and found him dead in front of the teraphim. Halal then took the form of a man so that he could deceive the people, whom were astonished at what they found. He convinced them that the saintly Adapha and his loyal friend Sheikh derived their blessings from worshipping idols. The people then believed that Adapha and Sheikh prayed to the idol Baal. Halal, or the evil one, answered their prayers. Halal convinced these people that the powers Adapha had to convert people, to cause rain to fall, to cause crops to grow, and to heal the sick, all came from the fact that Adapha and Sheikh worshipped this teraphim. So the deceptive nature of Halal affected all the people, and they all began to construct idols, causing idolatry to spread throughout the world. Ancestral worship was the result of people worshipping man. Cadmium was placed into the sarcophagus, and every place they travelled they would carry his remains. Idol worship and ancestral worship spread throughout the land until the time of Cush and Babylon, because it became the custom of people to take the deceased father of the household with them. Later on, great egocentric kings had teraphims built of themselves while they lived, and consequently their followers did the same. Idol worship was born. Tablet 10, the Ebony Seed. 19 times 2 equals 38. Lo, O Abraham, out of Seth did we give you Utnapishtim, who is also called Noah, son of Lamech and Camilla. Halal spoke of this soul before he was conceived, as one he would remove in due time, but his plan never weighed my plan. For when I want a thing to exist, I say, exist, and if it doesn't, it won't. For there was no light, and I called it out of darkness, and it came. There was no Noah, I called him out of the spirit, and his soul came. And I called the water, and it too came. In the end, I will call the fire out of the light to consume the earth, and all that live on it. And all the land knew Noah, for he would be the Adam again. The earth is to grow out of his sons. He was a perfect man, but out of his son's son came the seed of Halal on earth called Canaan, whose sons were to spread the seed of the jinns on earth, shedding blood. They are without any purity, being cursed with leprosy, and our servant was sent into the land of Canaan to clean up the lepers, yet failed. The earth cried out to me that it was again filled with evil, but Utnapishtim was born in the earth to save life, and Halal knew he was born in the first hour that he, Utnapishtim, first breathed. The descendancy of Cadman. According to Adam's calendar, Utnapishtim was born in the year 1056 AC to Lamech, the son of Methuselah and Camilla. Utnapishtim's wives were named Mabina, Wala and Nama. Adamites were upon the earth for 9 generations, but had strayed away from the way of Adam, for Adam had given 10 pages to his sons. Adamites became wicked and fought because of Seth's seed and his mate Aklamia, the twin sister of his brother Abel. They fought against each other and violated the commandments of the scriptures. These were the children of Adam. So Eli and Elianel saw fit to send another newsbearer to guide the people back to the way of those faithful Adamites before them. Utnapishtim spent much of his youth with the son of Adapha, also called Enoch, who instructed him about Eli and Elianel, the Most High, the Highest, and his mission as a newsbearer of Eli and Elianel. As a child, the Anunnaki Nusku Gabriel would spend much time playing with him, before he revealed to him his mission as a newsbearer of Eli and Elianel. The Anunnaki Nusku gave him an ebony seed and told him to plant it, and one day in the future he would learn its purpose. It took 40 years for the ebony seed to grow to a full-sized tree.